Okay. Well, this one's from OP Boone. He's had some really good suggestions. Let's see what he has in this one.
With the suggestion box being my favorite segment, you knew that there was no way I wasn't at least going to listen to OP Boone's suggestion with you guys. I mean, OP Boone is the only person that's ever actually had a suggestion get implemented as far as I know. So we have a second suggestion from OP Boone. This might be the only way that DSP improves his content for the rest of time. So of course we gotta hear him out.
In regards to recent discussion about stepping back from gaming content and expanding to more podcast-style content, expanding more into gaming news is a better move for you than politics. There's a significant overlap in audience interest between gaming playthroughs and gaming news, making it likely that your existing viewers would be interested in the content. With your team of editors, you can create 10 to 15-minute videos focusing on one major news story per video, separate from the podcast. This makes insights on gaming events more accessible to a wider audience rather than being buried with lengthy podcasts.
And so far, so good. Everything seems to be making sense. As much as I don't appreciate OP Boone being a mega dent, any normal person would be able to see the benefit of what he's saying and the suggestion that he's giving. It would absolutely make sense for DSP to do that, to cut out the DSPN segment or something similar to it, and upload it separately so that people don't have to sift through the pile of shit that is the level 1 pre-stream every day.
Your DSP throwback editors could shift their focus to this project after completing the Red Dead and Final Fantasy XIII remaster projects. Considering the success of your retro reacts compared to the remaster projects, their efforts would be more beneficial in highlighting DSP news clips, which have the potential to garner thousands of views, rather than remastering decade-old footage that receives only a few hundred views.
Again, absolutely right. All of that checks out. DSP has been telling us nonstop recently how much more successful the pre-stream is, how him talking is getting so much more attention than him playing video games. So why doesn't he put more effort into that like he says that he wants to? Why doesn't he have his unpaid team of editors start focusing on that and cutting these clips like this? Again, not a big OP Boone fan, but it's checking out.
For example, you can highlight the recent Xbox announcements discussed in the Level 1 podcast, episode 254, perhaps incorporating snippets from previous episodes, where speculation about the announcement was rampant on social media. This additional content would find a natural home here on DSP Gaming, though it's possible those videos might get buried under the high volume of daily Let's Plays. You consider establishing DSP News, its own separate channel. Alongside DSP Reacts and DSP Throwback, it's worth discussing this with your viewers of the podcast to see what's best if you end up going this route.
Oh yeah, because that's exactly what DSP needs. He needs a fourth channel. He needs that like he needs another hole in his head. I love that the solution to new content being buried is not to fix his upload schedule from what he's doing now, but instead to just create an entirely new channel with an entirely new subscriber base that he would have to build from the ground up. Not only do I think that he's incapable of doing that, but the whole thing would reek of a scam, because that would be the way that he would quadruple dip on memberships. Because triple dipping wasn't bad enough, we have to quadruple dip now. I gotta be honest though, out of this entire suggestion so far, this is the worst part. I'm honestly surprised.
As I mentioned in an earlier suggestion, if the gaming news segment gains traction, then you can consider branching out to cover related topics like movies and TV shows in separate news videos, broadening your content appeal even further. I previously suggested using YouTube's live stream clipping feature for DSP news segments. Now with the team of editors, the idea seems more viable than ever. I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
Well, honestly, I don't hate it. Do I really think that it's going to be a successful venture for you? I don't think so. But that has less to do with the idea and more that you're just an insufferable piece of shit. Because the reality is, I don't know how many people are really going to tune into DSPN news clips. Because you don't actually present any factual news. You don't have pop-ups and you don't have anything to back up any of your claims. DSPN, at the end of the day, really is just DSP reading gaming-related Twitter headlines and then giving his opinion on it. His uninformed opinion. So I really don't know how big of a market there is for that. I understand that other people can do that and have great success with it, but those people aren't DSP. Their opinions might actually be a little more informed, or at least entertaining in some fashion. But DSP is not that. He's not entertaining. He's just obnoxious and grating. And aside from detractors, I don't know who is going to be watching those clips, and that's definitely not the audience that he wants to target. I'll tell you though, as a detractor, it would be really nice if DSP started clipping his own stuff, just so that all of the other clip channels don't have to work so hard, you know?
Because here's the thing, like, technically, the news that I cover, all right, is the news that I'm interested in. Don't get me wrong, there's usually almost always gaming news going on. The problem is that a lot of it is just unrelated to anything that I have an interest in doing. You know, if there's a bunch of stuff that's PC-centric, I probably don't care about it. If there's a bunch of stuff that's covering drama topics that I'm not involved in, like this whole Sweet Baby Inc. thing, I think is the dumbest fucking thing possible. I think it's people on both sides being stupid, and it's like, do I really want to even cover that as news? Because I really don't feel like it is. I just think it's stupid political shit, honestly.
It doesn't matter whether or not you think it's just stupid political shit, DSP. It is the news. That's what people are talking about, and that's what's going on in the gaming sphere. Your personal interest in it doesn't make it not news. But I thought that you were the guy that was promoting DS politics. I thought that you were constantly talking about how in the near future you're going to be doing that, and that's going to be your next branch out. Now, all of a sudden, it's involved in the gaming news, something that you are actually familiar with, and you don't want to talk about it? You'd think that if you were going to make that venture, that you would start somewhere where you were a little more familiar with the territory, you know, gaming. But what do I know? I'm not a successful businessman like DSP, obviously. And if this is something that he wanted to do, he wouldn't have to cover all of the topics that everybody's always talking about. He really could just make a valiant effort to cover a few more things a week, and this is something that could be accomplished. But of course, putting in any more effort than he already does is far too much work for DSP, and he's not interested in doing that. Because coasting by and begging and receiving free handouts is far easier than actually working, as DSP has shown us.
But, you know, I don't know, like, I always tend to, like, hone in on the topics that I like, right? The thing is, what I want you guys to understand is, when I say I have editors working on stuff for me, that's very much true. But when I say that, these are not, how can I say? It's not like I have a crack team of full-time employed people who are editing content. You know what I'm saying? Like, what I have very much is a grassroots group of people who like me and like the content that I make, and they want to help.
Look how desperately he tries to avoid just acknowledging that he doesn't pay them, that they do all of this work for free. It's a grassroots group of people who like me and they want to help. Just say that they're volunteers. Just say that you don't pay them. Everybody knows what the reality is. By you acknowledging it, it's really not going to change anything. Because this very detractor video is going to exist whether you acknowledge that you pay them or not. But I guess shout out to all of the grassroots groups of people that just want to help out and do a bunch of labor for free. You guys are getting scammed, and that's on you.
So they make some thumbnails, right? Or in the case of the DSP Throwback channel, that's an idea that has been kicked around for a couple of years, and the offer was already made to me for a couple of years. Hey, if you ever would want to do something with a channel like that, we'd be willing to work on this for you, to edit the videos together, to upscale them, to make those lost playthroughs available for posterity purposes. And so I kind of said, not yet, not yet, not yet. And then I decided this year would be the year. Let's start it off fresh in January. Let's get a new project going and stuff. And then, of course, thanks to your feedback, I had the idea for Retro React, and that's working well on the channel. So now we have that good variety of content on that channel.
So you mean to tell me that this guy had people that were going to do all of this work for him and essentially just give him free money for years, and he was actively turning it down? Make that make sense, DSP. Because it's actually no work on your behalf. All you had to do was get the hard drives out of the closet. You're meaning to tell me that for free money that you weren't willing to get the hard drives out of the closet? You really are one of the laziest people I have ever had the misfortune of knowing about. And real quick, I have to acknowledge the fact that he said that they make some thumbnails. That's just a lie, DSP. They make all of the thumbnails. When is the last time you ever made a thumbnail? I mean, really, if you could give us the date of the last thumbnail you made, I would love to know.
But what you have to understand, it's not like these people are essentially doing it for the love of doing it. Like, they love this work.
And that again just translates to I'm not paying them. I don't know why he is unwilling to just say that when it is the reality. He will come up with 100 different creative ways to just not acknowledge what the truth really is, that they're unpaid labor. Because even he knows to some extent that what he's doing and the way that he's not giving them any sort of acknowledgement or any pay at all is kind of disgusting. And really just goes right in line with the way that he treated all of his friends back in CT. Because none of those people really ever got paid either. Not Howard or not Respect the Pack. Rambo wound up receiving some money, but that's only because he had to ask first. It really is insane how many people DSP has conned into giving him free work. Free thumbnails, free editing, free video content, free shorts. I just couldn't imagine getting rizzed up by this guy enough to give him free content. Yuck.
For me to say, so I like the fact that you helped me out so much over here. Thanks so much. But by the way, just stop doing that. Now I want you to redirect your efforts to do something completely and utterly different. I feel like they'd be a little bit ungrateful, no? Like, the reason that the people are doing it is because they like it. You know? I like making thumbnails. I like doing this editing work. The editing work is appealing to me. It's fun. I'm gaining experience, learning how to do it. You know, I'm getting better at it. I'm learning about all these things. Like, for example, if you actually look at the videos on DSP Throwback, just the fact that the videos have gone through several levels of editing. Now, you know, first it was just put the videos together. Then it was, oh, now we're going to upscale them. Oh, now we're going to do audio cleansing. You know, and it keeps improving. Like, the video quality actually keeps improving, getting better over time. Not that many people are noticing because the videos get, what, 100 views each? Over time, I'm sure that's going to grow. But, you know, for the initial uploads, they're not getting that much. But this is a thing. It's like, oh, you know, it's a project that people are working on. They're enjoying doing it. It's like a hobby. It's not something that you're expecting to sink endless hours into and take ultra seriously. It's something that you're getting experience out of it while you're also helping me out, which is nice, right?
But how does any of that justify the fact that you're making money off of their hobby? They're putting in the hours, they're putting in the effort, and they're putting their experience and skills to use, while you sit there and just rake in the cash. And I use rake in the cash very loosely because I'm sure that channel doesn't actually make all that much money because nobody wants to watch that shit. But the point stands, DSP is making money off of other people's hard work. That's never okay, no matter how he wants to sit here and try and justify it. It's not okay. Because these people, if they really wanted to edit, if they really wanted to continue to do this, could do this for somebody else and make money. It's just more telling about DSP's character that he doesn't acknowledge that and compensate them in some sort of way, even if it's not a fixed amount, even if it's not all that much money. Anything is better than nothing, and that's what he's currently giving them.
I feel like I said, if you're going to ask someone, hey, what I'd like you to do is every day on the podcast, just sit on that podcast that was a 2-hour podcast and sift through and edit out 15-minute clips and topics and title them and make them separate videos and do this and do that. That's a job, right? Like, that's a job. That's literally a job. And when you say people do it, you're right. They do it because they're giant YouTubers. You know, Asmon Gold probably has people he pays to do that. I'm sure Moist Critical has people he pays to do that because they're huge.
Them having people that do that, DSP, has nothing to do with the size of their channel or the size of them as content creators as a whole. It instead has everything to do with the fact that they understand how beneficial that can be for their online presence and their business that they own and operate. Again, using the term business very loosely. So you can sit here and say, oh, I'm just a small guy. There's no way I could do that. I'm just a little old me on YouTube, my little tiny channel. But that's not the reality, DSP. The problem is that you just don't see how beneficial these kinds of things can be. You're not thinking big, you're thinking little, and that's why you're forever going to be on level 1.
If I was huge, I would also have employees to do that. In fact, back in the day when I was at the height of my popularity, I shit you not, that was my plan. I was actually going to hire like 3 people, and they were going to handle the day-to-day bullshit that I hated doing, like uploading, babysitting videos, putting them into playlists, making thumbnails. I was actually going to employ people. When I made tons of money back in the day, that was my idea. And then the priority for me became to move first because I didn't want to be stuck in Connecticut forever. Because imagine if I employed 3 people in Connecticut to do this, but I want to move. And then I eventually decide to move, and now 3 people are out of a job because they can't do it from across the country, right?
No, wrong. All of that can absolutely be done from the other side of the country. It is all remote work. The thumbnails, all of the editing can absolutely be done. It could be done on a different planet if they had internet access. So all of that is just an excuse. There's no way that you were not trying to leave people out of a job and wanted to move first because of it. That's not even something that you thought about. Quit lying. Also, all of the things that he listed that he was going to pay somebody else to do for him is completely asinine. He was going to have other people upload for him. They were going to babysit the uploads. Not a job that ever needed to be done, but that was going to be somebody's paid full-time gig, I guess. Making thumbnails. DSP, you can't be bothered to make your own thumbnails? I mean, I know that the answer is no because you haven't made a thumbnail in God knows how long, but thumbnails really aren't all that complicated. They don't take a whole lot of effort to do, especially not your boring ass thumbnails that are all generic and samey. I doubt that there's even an original idea in any of your thumbnails, so it should have been incredibly easy to do your own thumbnails. And the last thing was putting videos into playlists. Fun fact for anybody who doesn't upload videos to YouTube, when you upload them, it just asks which playlist that you want to put it in, and then you can just put it in there, and that's the end of the story. That's it. It's not a complicated process. It doesn't take ages to do. It's actually just part of the upload. And I want to point out that 3 out of 4 of those things that he was going to pay somebody else to do are not skills. They don't require any sort of skill at all. The one exception obviously being thumbnails. If you were paying somebody to do thumbnails, they would probably be of a higher quality because they know how to do it. It is a skill. But uploading videos, babysitting uploads, and putting videos into playlists is not something that you just get better at. That's not a skill that you have. So why would DSP waste the money to hire somebody to do what is essentially meaningless labor? At least with thumbnails and editing, you can justify it by saying that you're not good at either of those things and your content would benefit from it. But everybody can upload to a playlist and everybody can upload a video. I mean, literal kids do it.
So my idea was to move first and then basically expand upon that. If I was staying at the level of popularity I was at, hire editors, hire people to do that. And then what happened was I moved and immediately the internet turned against me. Like as soon as I came out here, it was like day 1 that I moved to Washington was when all those negativity feelings came towards me. Everyone just turned me into a joke. Everyone just kind of just crapped on me. Within a year, my channel had been hit with so many copyright strikes that's when my channel law had to be removed from the YouTube algorithm and shit like that. And we're not going to sit here and talk about that endlessly, but that's just what happened. And it was like, well, that's it.
So I guess the entire state of Washington is actually just a detractor. Who knew the whole time? The very state that had the air that fixed his back? It was a secret detractor. So I guess big ups Washington. You're not my favorite state or anything, but you are in fact a detractor and you got to get some props for that.
That's the income is gone. The income that I was once making when I was at my big YouTube popularity was gone, and the possibility of me hiring people as employees disappeared because I was up to my eyeballs in debt from the move. My income was halved. It's like, well, now I'm screwed. All those ideas are gone, you know?
I mean, the real solution to that was just not to go into so much debt when you were moving. If you had to go into that much debt to move across the country, odds are you didn't need to move across the country. And I'm unsure as to why that plan didn't just shift down in scope. Why didn't his idea just scale down from 3 to 1? Why did the plan change from I'm going to pay these people to do this work to I'm going to rely entirely on the indentured servitude of my fans? Seems like a rather large leap to make if you ask me.
So I understand where OP Boon's coming from. I totally feel like, yeah, that could have happened, right? Like, this is something that definitely I could have had editors who I employ as full-time employees, and they come in and they do this work for me every day. And it definitely would have been awesome to do that because that's what the top people are doing. We know that, right? The problem is that's not reality for me. The reality is I'm a one-man crew who works all day long, and I get exhausted with the amount of work I'm already putting in. I can't do that extra work. Do I have people who are volunteers who have stepped up and said, yes, we'd like to make content for you and help you with this stuff? Yes. But they're basically doing the stuff that they're interested in doing.
How does he fail to realize that if he has these other people doing things for him, that makes him not a one-man crew anymore? He's not allowed to tout that around as if it means anything. Not that it ever really did, but he's just not allowed to. Because it's just not true. He's actively lying if he does. Because he doesn't do all of the things himself. He doesn't do his own goddamn thumbnails. Yeah, he might upload his own videos, and yeah, he might make them with no editing, but he doesn't do almost any of the work on the DSP Throwbacks channel. That's almost entirely ran by those dents that are doing free labor. Imagine if a sandwich shop owner owned and operated an entire sandwich shop by themselves. They were there every day, open to close. They made all of the sandwiches, they prepped all of the food that they needed, and they made every single sandwich for every single customer. That's a one-man show, absolutely. They do all of the work. Now imagine that same skeleton sandwich shop owner makes that claim while simultaneously having a second sandwich shop under their name that they make money from that is operated entirely by somebody else. You're not a one-man crew then anymore. And even that analogy kind of sucks because DSP doesn't even do all the work on his first channel. He gets all of his thumbnails made for every single channel by, allegedly, Das Bullshit. This guy sucks, man, and he ruined my sandwich analogy.
For me to now say, oh, by the way, that throwback channel thing didn't work, so fuck all that work. Just throw that away. Instead, let's edit some 15-minute clips out of my podcast every day and hope that takes off. Like, it's kind of the same thing. Didn't you notice? For like a year, okay, we did YouTube Shorts. Did you notice that? It was from late 2022 all the way through about late 2023. Why did I do YouTube Shorts? Because people asked for them. They said, oh, why don't you do shorts? Shorts are so popular, and they really help channels, and they boost them and all of that. And there were a lot of shorts. You know, we did them for all the fall games of 2022, my Oblivion playthrough in 2023. We tried to highlight epic moments of each of the big games that I was playing and stuff like that. You want to know what impact it had on the channel? Zero. Because number one, none of those views end up being monetized, even though they claim they are. No exaggeration. If you get like 100,000 views on a short, you get like a penny. So out of all the shorts I put together, I probably made 25 cents, okay? Now, I didn't make all those shorts. I made a few of them, but most of those were made by fans who wanted to help the channel.
Wow, we couldn't even give Arkham Edits a shout out. The guy literally made content for your channel and you couldn't even acknowledge that he existed by name. Very cool, DSP. And you wonder why nobody ever wants to work with you. You wonder why you can't get sponsorships. It's because you act like a piece of shit afterwards. And that entire situation is nothing but DSP's fault because of the way that he acted when it happened. Because if Arkham Edits came up to him and said that he wanted to be paid for all of his shorts, all he had to say was, no, I'm not really interested in doing that. I appreciate the work that you've done thus far, but as far as future shorts go, I'm gonna have to decline all of them and say that I don't want them. And then he could just move on. But of course he labeled him as a detractor and pushed him so far to one side that he is actively making detractor content. And notice how when he's talking about how it had an impact on the channel, the only thing that he mentions is that it doesn't make him any money. Because that's all he cares about. He doesn't actually care about making content that people want to see. Because the impact on your channel from making content should be that people watch it and enjoy it. If your short gets a couple of thousand views, DSP, that's a couple of thousand people that are probably entertained by your content, I would hope. I know you have detractors and those numbers are inflated, but you don't know that and I can't prove that. But of course, he didn't get as much money as he was hoping to get, so it wasn't worth his time. Moving on.
And that was a lot of work and effort that went into making those shorts. And they didn't do shit. You know, they got a few thousand views each. No one really watched. That's the thing with YouTube shorts that people don't understand, just like TikTok. People who watch TikTok clips and people who watch YouTube shorts don't say, oh, look, that's a good clip. Let me go check out the channel. They just sit there in the feed. Clip, 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 clip. It doesn't bring attention to your content. People just enjoy the one clip and then they move on.
And that's just not true at all. And I don't know why DSP has this thought in his head that it works like this, because he's not familiar with these social media apps. Because there's been so many times that I've been scrolling through shorts, or I've seen friends that are scrolling through TikTok, and then they watch one TikTok that is immediately followed up by a similar TikTok from the same person. And if they see similar TikToks from the same person again and again, eventually they're going to go to the channel and be like, you know what, I actually like this content. Let me follow this person. Let me check them out. Let me follow them on other social medias because I like this person, their personality, and the content that they make. I don't know where DSP is missing the point on that. I don't know how he has come to the conclusion that people just watch shorts or TikToks infinitely and never check out the content creators. People have favorite TikTokers. People have favorite YouTube shorts creators. That doesn't happen if they didn't care about them.
That's why they're so short. They're supposed to be quick, digestible clips. You're not seeking out extended engagement with that content. You just want the 20 seconds and you're on to the next variety clip. They don't serve a purpose to a YouTube channel. So all the work for the whole year that was put into shorts did nothing. Literally did absolutely nothing, right?
Well, then I guess it's good that Arkham Edits did most of the work for you and you didn't lose out on that much of your own time, DSP. Quit crying and acting like a little bitch about it. Really, the way that he talks about it, you'd think that the CEO of YouTube himself sucker punched him and stole his fucking wallet.
So I understand the suggestion. Make the clips of the show, 15-minute segment that just talks about game news. And maybe that video will get traction. But do I expect that anyone is going to watch a 15-minute news clip and then immediately come to my channel of DSP Gaming to watch more content? No. You know what they're going to look for? The next news clip. That's it. So unless we have an ongoing series of news clips that people will watch in succession, it's never going to do anything.
But that's exactly what the suggestion was recommending though, DSP. So far as saying that you should maybe even make a 4th channel where you do exclusively this, because there's going to be so much of this content. It's okay to have different types of content that only certain people want to see. I mean, don't you brag about that all of the time when you're talking about your multiple audiences that cycle through for all of the different games that you play? It's kind of a similar concept, so you would think that you'd be accepting of that. Unless all of that was a lie the entire time so that you could cope about how nobody watches your boring ass content. If that's the case, then just say it then. Quit beating around the bush the way that you do.
So maybe in this regard, this suggestion is better than the whole shorts thing. Because I do think the shorts was a waste of time. I think YouTube shorts are fucking terrible. And they're just trying to copy TikTok and they serve no purpose. And YouTube is so off base with them, they're idiotic. But, you know, the whole clipping thing, having a segment about a certain topic that's edited out of a podcast probably would work. But again, for that to work, you'd have to have someone who's dedicated to do it, you know. I would think more of, you know, you have to have someone you're going to pay to do it. I can't pay anyone to do it. If I'm in a situation where if I have a slow streaming day, okay, and I don't make, you know, a good amount of revenue on a certain day, and now I'm behind, and if I have a few of those in a week and now I'm worried how am I going to pay bills, how exactly am I supposed to pay an employee to sit here and clip stuff out of my streams?
I'm gonna be frank with you, DSP. Shout out Frank, obviously. If a couple of slow tip days is enough to bring the entire DSP space gaming empire down, crumbling to its knees, then the thing that you need to be doing is reconsidering your entire business strategy and whether or not you can actually continue to do this. Because that sounds like a failing business. That does not sound like a successful business. That does not sound sustainable. That sounds like a disaster that you created and refused to fix. An editor really should be the last thing on your mind at that point.
You know, it's just not going to happen. And I think that's the thing. When you look at other YouTubers who are successful, correct? And you look at the situations they're in, none of them are the stature of me. These are not people who have 300 viewers on a stream, 300 viewers on a video. These are people who already are bringing in thousands and thousands and thousands of views and hours of engagement and interactions on any piece of content. They have the attention. Then that warrants them sinking in the money and the time to do the kind of projects that they work on. I'm not them. I feel like, again, that's what Asmongold is. Asmon fucking Gold is like 1,000 times bigger than me. The dude brings in like 30,000 viewers on a stream.
Why are we so hard-pressed about Asmongold today? Why do we keep name-dropping him? This is like the 3rd one. And you don't have to be some big fancy hotshot streamer in order to have editors or hire people to do better work for you. You just have to have a passion and a level of care that goes into the content that you create. Because it's not like you have to have these people on retainer. You can pay them per video. There's definitely people out there that would do the work per video. But of course, we're not Asmongold. We don't make infinite money, I guess, and then that means that we can't improve our content. Sound good? Sounds good to me. And by the way, Asmongold agrees, I guess.
I bring in 300. That's literally 1,000 less, isn't it? No, that's 100 less. Okay, he's 100 times bigger than me. He's not 1,000 times bigger. He's 100 times bigger than me. That's why he does that. You know, like these comparisons are wild because people are comparing, you know, a grape to a watermelon. Really, like I'm the grape. You get that? I'm this little guy down here. I'm doing the best I can with what I've got. But, you know, you say, well, I don't understand why you don't do the same thing as this person who's insanely successful and huge and bigger than you. You just answered the question, right? Anyway, all right. So OP Boone, I appreciate the suggestion. I don't think, sadly, I don't think that would work. Only because again, that's something that maybe if I could pay an employee to do it, it would work. I'm not gonna have people stepping up to volunteer to do that kind of work because it's a lot of work. They have to watch every podcast in full. They have to figure out what the segments are, edit them out, make them separate videos, put them up, promote them. You know, it's a lot of work.
Kind of funny how DSP would call all of that a lot of work for somebody to do, but the detractors, they're just clout chasing. They don't put any effort into their content. They're just trying to make a quick buck. Even though a lot of that is exactly what detractors do. They watch the pre-streams, they clip them out, they edit all of the videos, they do their own commentary. Some of them even make their own thumbnails. It's me, I make my own thumbnails, big ups me. But it's not a lot of work unless you're doing it for DSP's benefit.
For someone who's basically a volunteer. You know, the volunteer work on the DSP Throwback channel is already a huge, tremendous undertaking. We still have a lot of content there we have to make visible. For example, the whole LA Noire playthrough, right? The online gameplay of Red Dead 1 that became Suicide Kings, the Undead Nightmare playthrough. And there's all these forgotten vlogs and playthroughs that are still all for posterity purposes. We want to get those on the channel. That's the whole idea of the project to begin with. The idea of DSP Throwback is not, oh, let's make profit. The idea is we want lost videos to hit the internet for posterity. Now, the cool thing is we found a way with Retro React to have content that's appealing to the audience and make some profit. But that's not the whole purpose of the channel. I'm not going to tell people who are working on that channel, just drop that channel now because it didn't catch on and go do other work. That's not the point. You see? Okay. I hope all that makes sense. Now we got to get to shout outs because now it's already 12:30. Guys, again, you understand when we do suggestion box, this is kind of why I'm apprehensive about doing it because you say the show's too long, but then every time we do suggestion box, it's fucking 12:30 already and I haven't even done a shout out yet.
Then quit looping, DSP. You do this all the time. Whenever you do one of these suggestion box segments, you decide that when you do your answer, you're going to give the same answer 3 or 4 times on loop. Imagine all the time that you would be saving if you just acknowledged the suggestion and answered it one time. But I know that the reality is you're not interested in doing that because you're just doing this to pad out the length of your pre-stream so you don't have to play the game. But totally unrelated to padding, this is actually a double feature because I had a rather short clip that I wanted to take a look at before the end of the week, so here we are. Enjoy a super special double feature.
Am I going to play Stellar Blade in April? Unlikely, but we'll see. I'll leave it as a maybe, but it's unlikely. And I'm going to be honest with you. Would you really want to know the truth? Although the combat, I have looked a little bit into the combat and it looks okay to me. Like, it's not amazing, but it's not bad. It looks decent. If I play Stellar Blade, 99% of the time I'm playing the game, people in the chat are going to be fucking immature shitheads about the character because the character was designed purposefully to be a sexualized character. The game dev has outright said it, and all the coverage you're seeing of the game online is just sexualized. Meaning, oh, look, instead of show gameplay, let's have her walk up and down this ladder 10 times in a row to see her butt cheeks jiggle.
I mean, that's kind of cool, not gonna lie. But from my understanding, that's not what the dev said at all. What the dev actually said is that they spent a lot of time modeling the backside of the character because that's what the people are gonna be looking at the most, being that this is a third-person action game. And the thing that you see the most in a third-person action game is the back of somebody's head and their entire backside. Of course, that does include the ass cheeks. That's very robust and cool, and hers are very robust and cool. But DSP always hears what he wants to hear, simply because that's the easiest way to fit his narrative.
Well, I don't fucking do that. I don't care about that. And I don't want my stream to be all about that. So I'm not going to fucking subject myself to that when people will definitely be doing that in the chat. So I think I'm just going to skip it. You know, just being honest. I don't feel like I'm missing out too much anyway. Because like what I've said, if this game did not have that woman as the protagonist, I don't think people would be talking about it like they are. I don't think people would even be that excited for it.
This is not something that you can really prove one way or another, so there's no point in arguing it from either standpoint, but go ahead, DSP, that's fine. But I thought that DSP loved video games. It's his passion, it's his hobby. In fact, it's both of those things before it's a business where he makes money. He's said that, actually, very recently. So you would think that if this was his passion and there was a new third-person action game that a lot of people are hyped up for, that he would at least give it a chance and look into it. But if you thought that, then I guess you would be wrong, because DSP pretty much already wrote the game off simply because the main protagonist is too attractive, I guess. And in his response, he's actively blaming his viewers because they would be acting inappropriately in his chat. Even though he has a constant iron grip on his chat and what they talk about, doing lean and manual bans as frequently as he's playing the game. So it's not exactly like that's an element that he wouldn't be able to control like normal.
I think it's a decent game when it comes to the gameplay elements, but people are loving the game and hyping it because they're perverts. They're over-sexualized people who are just about the fucking main character. They want to lust over her and fucking look at the butt cheeks jiggle, look at the boobs jiggle, and the devs say, oh yeah, I based her off of a model on purpose so that people would do this shit. Well, guess what? I'm not into that. Since that seems to be a major part of the game development cycle for this game and what was intended, and I don't care about that, I guess I'm skipping it.
But that happens all the time in video games, DSP. Do you think they make all of these video game player models look exactly like the actors because they just like the actors? They could have made the player model look like anything. The entire point of getting the likeness of a Hollywood actor is simply so that people will look at them and go, oh wow, that person is pretty good looking. I would like to look at that character model.
Oh well. If people would actually just be more mature, I probably wouldn't care. But I know literally the entire chat will just be like, oh my God, lusting over this woman constantly when I try to play the fucking game. So I'm just not going to bother with it. You know, I hate to say it, but that was one of the advantages back in the day of when I played a game like Bayonetta. I didn't live stream it. So I could just do the content, put it out. And yeah, people would be like that in the comments, but at least it didn't permeate the content when I was doing it live. You know, I love having an interactive audience. I feel like the interactive audience will be lost during a Stellar Blade playthrough because people won't be able to control themselves. And I know that sounds fucking sad, but I think it's true. It's this thing about human society. Like, oh, a sexualized character. I can't control myself. Time to just fucking talk about it constantly, right?
Two things. The first one being that Derek is absolutely punching the air right now and catching all of these strays. If there was ever a game that DSP was going to play where Derek didn't have to have an adult site open in a separate browsing tab, this was going to be it, and now he's completely let down and shattered. And the second thing is, DSP, you're supposed to have a moderation team. You're supposed to have people that are able to control your chat. It's entirely your fault if you don't. And I think it's kind of a shitty thing to not play a game that people want to see you play, or at least claim that they want to see you play, simply because you're unwilling to give anybody enough power to become a mod.
Prisoner says, is that how some people were acting when you played Nier Automata? Yeah, I would say this. With Nier Automata, it wasn't as bad. And it was bad, don't get me wrong. But I think the reason it wouldn't have been as bad is because the game was unique and had a crazy good story. Like, you think the game's going to be a game just a superficial combat with half-naked androids. But then as you're playing it, you realize the plot is super fucking good. It's deep, it's interesting, it's fourth wall breaking, and I'm so happy that people convinced me eventually to go back to that game. They're not going for that with Stellar Blade. They're not. They're just literally making a game with good action with an over-sexualized character.
He says that with such confidence, but he doesn't actually know that. He hasn't played the game. He doesn't know anything about the story. I promise you that. So how is he going to sit here and say that it's not going to be an interesting story? It's not going to be fourth wall breaking. It's not going to be deep. They're just going to make a decent action game with an over-sexualized character. He's jumping to these assumptions and he doesn't know anything about the game.
Did you know that the character has a skin suit? She has a skin-colored suit to wear to, again, make her look like she's nude. But the trick is, if you put it on, it makes the game harder. So in order to see her basically nearly naked, you have to basically play the hardest version of the game. Wow, this sounds like a game that's right up my alley, doesn't it? Right? That's what I'm all about.
I mean, that's kind of based, if you ask me, in a really good, unique idea. I mean, in this one mechanic, you were simultaneously appeasing and punishing the Coomers that are going to be playing the game. DSP can talk about the sexualization of the protagonist all he wants, but it's undeniable that that mechanic is incredibly clever and creative, and should honestly be applauded for being as clever and creative as it is.
No, I'll tell you really, here's why Stellar Blade is getting the coverage it's getting. Because it's the anti-woke game. It's following all the tropes of games that used to be out in the 1990s, the original Lara Croft shit, right? So many games today have gone woke, where, oh, the women, we're tired of them being over-sexualized, we're tired of them, you know, being portrayed in a certain way, and now we want to go, you know, this is a way that's they're spitting right in the face of all of that, correct? Ha, fuck you. We can still have, you know, sexualized women in games, and that's fine, but it's just not going to be for everyone.
See, but I think that the problem is that when I see an attractive protagonist in a movie or a video game, I don't immediately think that it's anti-woke. And when I see an ugly person in a movie or video game, I don't immediately think that it is woke. That's just not the first thought that comes to my mind. That's not how I'm wired. But I think that it does say something about DSP that is the first thought that comes to his mind, that that's how he views these things.
Personally, I don't have any gripes with the combat engine or anything that they did with the gameplay elements, but I'm not interested in the sexualization of characters, so I'm not going to care about the game. I'm going to skip it. If you like that, go for it. That's on you, and you enjoy it. I'm not going to hate on you for liking Stellar Blade, but I want you to respect the decision that I'm going to make to not make it part of my streams and content, since that was a major focus of the game development cycle. They've outright said it, okay?
And this is exactly why when I cut the clip, I called it DSP upset a female protagonist is attractive. Because he doesn't have any gripes with the gameplay. He doesn't actually have any complaints when it comes to the raw game. The one reason that he's not going to be playing the game is because the female protagonist is too attractive. I've never heard anybody say that before. That's never been a reason that I've received when asking somebody if they were going to play a game or if they were interested in playing a game. But this is DSP that we're talking about. The guy who was complaining about the over-sexualization of Cyberpunk 2077, which just means that he completely missed the point of the setting.
But I think that's what it is. There are so many games now that are going the other direction, you know, completely the other direction. And gamers are kind of riling against that. Like, no, actually, we liked how it was back in the day. It's good to have variety. It's good. In reality, it's good to have variety. It's good to have the option. If you like that, go for it. If you don't like that, don't go for it. There's something over here for you. There's stuff in between, and that's all perfectly fine, right? Variety is the spice of life. So if you like that stuff, go for it. I don't care about it, though.
Of course, variety is the spice of life. That's why we only play RPGs on DSP Space Gaming, and we only look at games that have buff male protagonists. No females allowed. This is a boys only zone. Speaking of a boys only zone, let's take a look at some of the comments from my last video, because we all know there's no girls in an Atlas comment section. And shout out all of the members, of course. But Awesome9 says, DSP doesn't realize how good he has it, even now. Plus, if he actually just listened to those suggestions, I would bet he would gain more positivity within his dens, but even more viewers and support. While obviously we'll never know whether he would gain those viewers and support if he implemented these suggestions, he absolutely would garner some sort of favor within his dent community if he implemented some of the suggestions that they recommend. But he knows that that's kind of a fruitless effort because he doesn't need any more favor from the dents. They already love him. They already give him as much money as they humanly can. That's why they're dents. PWOP says the amount of time that he dedicated to one person's suggestion he clearly didn't like is absurd. I 100% agree with you, but that's entirely on brand for DSP. His favorite type of content to make is complaining about something that he doesn't like, as much as he loves to claim that it's not. It's why he never plans ahead or sets himself up for the future, because he just loves complaining. It's his favorite content to do. And DJ McFlinty6770 says, watching detractors is like a sandwich shop. Something. Sounds good? Sounds good to me. And all I really have to say to that is, I agree. So shout out to everybody who watched the video, especially if you made it this far. Hopefully I'll catch all of you guys in the next video, but until then, make sure that you check out other detractor content and dive deeper into that. Snore tags.